Another week, another Football Tailgaters podcast where we go over hot topics in the NFL. Let me introduce ourselves, starting with Andy, the unbiased fan in the group, and myself, Aaron. I'm the Cowboys fan. It's only going to be two of us for today, and we're starting off with this offseason with a lot to talk about. And again, this is only the beginning, so this is pretty exciting and also maybe kind of devastating for you, Andy. So there's some things to talk about. Mainly, I think the biggest news so far right now is the fact that the Broncos have let go of Russell Wilson. That's a huge deal. There's also talk about the NFL looking to expand to 18 games in the future. And as well as the Falcons, probably they seem to be interested in Cousins and Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields as maybe their new quarterback to take over for that franchise. And also a question about Dak Prescott and if he should be the highest paid quarterback. And lastly, we'll go over some top free agents that are available currently. So let's start off with the biggest news for today, which is Russell Wilson is no longer riding with Broncos country. The ride's over. It's game over. It's huge for the Broncos. $85 million in dead cap, which is the largest dead cap hit in history, in league history. And I'm gonna ask you this, Andy. Let's talk about it. So, what do you think? What are your thoughts of Russell Wilson no longer being with the Broncos, and where should he go?
It all comes down to if you still think Russell Wilson can play. Either you say he's washed up or he can still play at a high level. You can make the excuse Nathaniel Hackett really brought him down and Sean Payton never liked him as he was extremely disrespectful with him on the sidelines, as we all saw last season. Or you can say that he's overrated and was carried by the defense in Seattle with the Legion of Boom. I myself think that Russell Wilson can still play at a high level, but he needs to be used with his strength, which is his legs. Not sure if he doesn't want to anymore, but that is something I would really speak to him before signing him. Atlanta Falcons or the Pittsburgh Steelers are a good place for him as they both have great offensive weapons in the running game and in the passing game.
That's interesting to me because you didn't mention the Raiders. And why didn't you mention the Raiders?
I didn't mention the Raiders because I know that it's in the same division as the Broncos. I just feel like it's just going to come a lot of uncertainty. I'm sorry.
He's getting released, though.
Yeah, he's getting released, so he gets to choose, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it is within the same division, but the offense is still kind of there, right? And the Raiders, I'm sure they're looking for a better option at quarterback.
But why would you want to put Russell Wilson in the division where you have Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert? Wouldn't you want him to be like with the Atlanta Falcons where he can actually do some damage? And I mean, your competitor is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Panthers, and the Saints. So he has a lot of potential to flourish there in that division.
If what you're saying is what's best for him, right, is getting easy competition, sure, go for it. But if he wants a place where he can be still competing to that high level that he wants to, and he even puts himself up to, right? Because he wants to be up there. Does he want to be up there? Who knows? Is he at the point, because he's 35 years old. So he's still young, obviously, but he's getting up to the point to where he's in the second half of his career as a quarterback, right? And I don't know how many years he has left in him. And these last 2 years, they didn't look pretty to him, right? They weren't nice to him. And I can see him either going into, if he goes to a weak division and if he goes with the Falcons, it's clear to me that his priority is him over his health over actually competing for a Super Bowl. At least personally.
Well, let me ask you something.
He would, what?
Do you think that Sean Payton is still a good head coach? I mean, let's face the facts. He did have Drew Brees as his quarterback. Right. Besides that, after Drew Brees retired, his team wasn't doing well in the New Orleans Saints that he actually left there. So who's to say that saying, oh, well, it's just actually Russell Wilson is the terrible quarterback because
Hmm.
he had Sean Payton. Well, who says that Sean Payton is a great coach? I mean,
Right.
it's let's just see, right? I know that. I mean, it's going to be his third coach, Russell Wilson. If he can't do anything, and then in the next year, then yeah, I would definitely go into the side of like, you know what, maybe his time has passed. But who knows? I mean, Sean Payton is still up there to be at risk for him not to be a great coach.
Um. Well, Sean Payton isn't a Mike McCarthy. I can tell you that because
Positive or
they
negative?
both went. That no, yeah, it's a positive thing that he's not a Mike McCarthy because I don't think Mike McCarthy is a good coach. I think he's a decent coach, personally speaking, right? Because you could, and many argue that he was carried by Aaron Rodgers. Now you look at a similar situation where Sean Payton had Drew Brees, and the track record is it's not identical, but you can argue that there were some similar
It's pretty
features
close.
there.
It's pretty close. Yeah, I would say
You can
so.
argue that you could argue that Sean Payton was carried by Drew Brees, and maybe what we're seeing here is I don't think I mean definitely it was completely awkward the situation. I think the Nathaniel Hackett thing was an awful start for the Broncos, and I think it just set things off in the wrong way. And it was just they've been stumbling so far. They haven't gotten their 2 feet set right because of this whole thing where they thought Russell Wilson was going to be their savior and
Right.
they were going to take him to places. But right, Nathaniel Hackett's not it. And then you bring in Sean Payton, who hasn't coached in a while, and you can even debate that maybe Sean Payton isn't the great coach you think he is because he had a great quarterback like Drew Brees. And now we were able to see that with this past season, and it wasn't all that pretty either. It wasn't as bad as Nathaniel Hackett, but it was better, and it was a step forward. But there were still some hiccups, and clearly the Denver Broncos don't think it's worth it enough to be paying. Well, I mean, they're still paying him either way, but they'd rather just pay him off and just find a better option at that point. So either that's really bad, organized, like being a bad GM, bad owner, making those bad decisions, basically, or it's really that Russell Wilson is that bad now.
It's a wait and see type of situation.
Yeah, it's a wait and see. Now, what if he goes to the Falcons and he still doesn't cut it, right? He still plays the same as he did, for example, this past season, because I think he played a better version of himself this past season than he did with Nathaniel Hackett, and I think there were some limitations.
He won 7 straight games.
So
And he beat the Chiefs too.
He did beat the Chiefs, right? And I don't know. You could also watch because I remember watching one of those games in that stretch of wins, and I didn't see any like wow things from Wilson, but I also didn't think he was hindering them much.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's got like an insane roster that carries him, right? But I also don't think he does the carrying.
Yeah.
So I think there's some balance there.
Because I mean, the Denver Broncos, what do they have? Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and then a questionable
Williams,
running game. I mean, Freeman, I mean, he's not amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the defense is all right for the Broncos, but it wasn't like an amazing team. I think Patrick, him being injured really hindered also the team. He's a really good wide receiver, and I know that he also got injured 2 years ago as well, so that also affected the team. I think he's a really good talent, but we don't know exactly if that particular team, the Broncos, is a good team. I'm saying Atlanta because you do have, even though they're not also, the players there are not players that have been successful, like Kyle Pitts as a tight end. He was coming off of college saying like, oh, he's an amazing prospect, but we haven't seen that. But we can also blame on the quarterback situation. We have London as well, and everybody's coming out of college. He's saying that he's also great, but we just haven't seen it. Maybe it could be because of the quarterback situation. Bijan Robinson is the only one that, and it took a while in last season for him to like flourish because the coach for some reason was putting like Algier a lot more than Brian Robinson. So that's a team that can actually flourish. And I'm just saying that he doesn't have that much competition, so it's a way for him to resurrect his career. And in the Steelers, I have a lot of respect for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are a good organization. They have a good coach that they have really good pieces, and he can also like do some damage there. I mean, I just have so much respect for the Steelers to actually put them in a good place. With the Raiders, we've seen them destroy so many careers in quarterback situation. They shipped off their car, and it's not like a comfortable place to be. I can tell you that Adams, the wide receiver there, is probably, he wouldn't want to be there, but he's stuck there. It is what it is. They're not going to trade him. So those are the two spots that I'm thinking. I don't know what teams you were thinking of.
I was thinking the Raiders and the Steelers. But I think the Falcons, whenever you mentioned the Falcons, it was also pretty interesting because of what you said. It's a weaker division, right? And they still got plenty of talent there, especially now that they got Robinson in the back. And the way this is going for him, I don't know. He left a pretty heartfelt message on Instagram. I don't know if you saw that, but he talked about some like highlights he had throughout the season with his players and stuff like that. So if what it really seems to be, it seems like he was pretty grateful for that opportunity he had in Denver. And I know he probably thinks that it wasn't the prettiest.
Right.
And that's okay. And I think he still cares about his career, right? And I still think he has enough gas left in the tank. And I could see him actually making a good push if he goes to somewhere with the Falcons, who, they weren't, their record wasn't bad at all, considering what they had in that roster, and especially with the quarterback under center. And I think if they grab Wilson and a new coach now that, that other guy's gone, it's going to be pretty interesting. And I could totally see that happening. And I don't think that the guy needs a whole big contract because he's already getting a big contract with the Broncos. So,
well, conspiracy theory. Do you really think that Sean Payton really, really like tried to make things work with Russell Wilson, or was it just like, it's just my way, and if you're not going to be able to do things my way, get out of here?
Well, wasn't that one point? There was, I don't know. I think there was like at one point in one of the games, he was, I mean, it always happens, right? Like, there's times where coaches just yell at their quarterbacks. But wasn't there drama? I want to say I remember. I have awful memory, but I feel like there was some tension going on.
For sure. It wasn't one of the... Well, I can tell you like a little bit of evidence because, well, I mean, whoever's listening out there, you guys can tell a little bit that I'm a little bit of a Russell Wilson fan. I thought he was amazing quarterback over there in Seattle. Yeah, he did come to the Denver Broncos. I really thought that he was going to like put them to a really high level. It was going to be really excited, but to my disappointment, it didn't work out. And again, trying to be an unbiased fan here, if he goes to another team and it doesn't work out, then I am going to be leaning towards for his career to be like over. But Sean Payton, when he came into the Denver Broncos, right off the bat, he was just not even talking to Russell Wilson. He's saying, hey, none of that, you're going to have your own office type of stuff. Like, you don't have to say those things public, for instance. Second of all, he also was criticizing how Russell Wilson was talking to the media of like not to be like not like a baby for them, like dependable in the media. And again, those are things that you're not supposed to say public. I mean, keep that indoors. And then, like you brought up, we're seeing in the sideline him yelling at Russell Wilson like he was a child. I know that he's a head coach and you get frustrated and stuff like that, but hey, this is a grown man. He's a veteran quarterback. He's not a rookie. It's not Bill Belichick talking to Mac Jones. Like, he got a little lucky that Russell Wilson is actually a composed human being, and he's not like, imagine if that was AB or maybe even Cam Newton that we just saw videos of him like explode, like fighting back. You never know. I mean, I think that also Sean Payton got a little lucky there, but I can think of it a little bit of this conspiracy theory that Sean Payton wasn't really a big fan of Russell Wilson, and if it didn't work out on his terms of and not putting things on Russell Wilson's like gameplay or trying to figure out of how to make the quarterback successful, then you're out of the team. I don't care if the Denver Broncos paid you hundreds of millions of dollars. That's not my problem. I'm gonna get my quarterback, and I'm gonna win here in my way, and we'll see if that's even gonna happen, right? Once he gets his quarterback, there's always gonna be an excuse. I'm thinking because it's. I remember when Sean Payton lost that NFC Championship against the Rams of that PI call that it wasn't called. And the NFC Championship that the Rams went to the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And Sean Payton, I mean, I know that you're like super angry and everything for not having that not called, but he wouldn't let it go like all off season. He wanted to sue. He wanted to do so many things. It's like, oh, like, come on, dude, like move on. And it just seems that type of person. But I mean, that's just me.
I want to also just kind of add on to the fact that the Denver Broncos haven't been great since they won that Super Bowl with Peyton Manning.
Right.
And I think ever since then, it's been a disaster for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a pattern. So aside from this whole Sean Payton thing, I think that also the organization isn't the cleanest over there in Denver. And I think that probably contributed to this, and the fact that they have $85 million in dead money. That is awful. That's not pretty. And that's the way you just set up that contract, right? And it was bad. It was like, I think you could probably say it's probably worse than the Deshaun Watson thing.
It's getting close. Yeah, it gets close, but that's all Walmart's fault. Like, yeah. I mean, well, is it though?
Yeah.
Did it come, or did they buy it afterwards?
I don't know. I don't know. But this is just bad. I think this is just Broncos messing up, and they're owning up to their mistake. And this is a really bad mistake. So the next person after the biggest dead money here, right after Russell Wilson, is Matt Ryan with the Falcons with $40.5 million. That's an absurd difference. And then you got right after that, Aaron Rodgers with the Packers, $40.3 million. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you actually combine those, and I think it's less than Russell Wilson's total. So that just speaks to the absolutely insane amount of money that the Broncos just lost. So that looks awful for the front office. And I mean, yeah, you get whatever you get. Let's move on to the next subject. I want to talk about the NFL trying to possibly expand to 18 games. So there's talk about it, but it's not happening anytime in the future. Or anytime like near future. Let's say like, what was it? I think they said something about 2030. When the next contract comes up, right? But let's talk about that. And they want to push for an 18 regular season game for the NFL. Should they do it?
As an NFL fan, I mean, I am 1,000% on board with this. Take off another preseason game and add it to the regular season game. I mean, more football, the better. Longer fantasy football, longer sports betting. It's just a longer happy time for all sports fans. On the other side, NFL players are not going to be too happy about this, as they risk more on injury for another game. I say just accept it, but in the conditions that in the next bargaining agreement, you will increase the salary cap for these players and just make, I don't know, a clause for their injury for it to be guaranteed.
And you got to think about it as well. The conversation we had with the running back situation, with that still is not fixed. So
right.
You got to look at that. And we also saw a huge increase in the cap. That's also another thing to keep an eye on.
Huge increase, yeah.
So everything, I think there's a lot of positives to this. Of course, the NFL is going to love another weekend of football, right? That's just a lot of money for them. There's a lot of positives with this. You mentioned a lot of them. But yeah, I think that's one thing to kind of keep an eye on is if the players will be happy with this. And I do like that idea that you just get rid of one more preseason and just shift it over to the regular season, basically, is what you said, and just have a 2-game preseason. And then just have the 18 regular season games, right? I think that's great. I don't see anything wrong with this. I think aside from maybe like more injury risks, and that's always a thing when you're increasing time, I guess, being played by these starters and stuff like that. Then again, I don't know. It's if it keeps going the right way, if the salary cap keeps increasing properly, like you said, I mean, there's not much to say. I think this is great overall, and I think they should do it. All right, so moving on from the next question, or going on to the next question. So we got a third question here for you and I. And this is going to be about Cousins and Justin Fields. So Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields. Justin Fields has been in the conversation of possibly being traded away, right? Are the Bears gonna stay with him as number 1 quarterback or not? And also, are the Vikings gonna keep Kirk Cousins as their number 1 quarterback? And that's quite interesting to me because there's 2 different teams here dealing with, I guess, 2 different scenarios with their quarterbacks, even though it's pretty similar in the fact that obviously, are they going to get rid of them or are they going to let them walk? In the fact that Kirk Cousins can just walk and go into the free agency, right, and go with a different team, and then Justin Fields probably getting traded away. So it's possible that Justin Fields, I think, could get traded away and have the Bears, get their number 1 and whatever. But I'm going to ask you this question. Who should the Falcons pursue in the Cousins Justin Fields? Let me restart that. So the Falcons are in the mix of possibly getting a quarterback, right? And that's something we talked about earlier. And Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields are one of the better options, right? But obviously there are some differences. So who should they get? Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins?
I would 100% get Kirk Cousins. He has proven he can win you many games. Cousins just needs help on defense to keep them in on the games or solidify the wins. Even though I do see much potential from Justin Fields, he's still a project, and as a new head coach that the Atlanta Falcons do have, I wouldn't risk my job in a project. So I would get the Kirk Cousins, the whatever, how do you say it? The more experienced quarterback that can produce.
And I do agree with that. And I would say the main reason why is because you're not giving away any trade assets here. For Justin Fields, you're trading to get the young talent, right? And you're risking it. Right. And again, you're risking the experience. You got Kirk Cousins.
That's a great point.
Who's had plenty of experience in the field, right? He's 35 years old, and he's a good quarterback, right? Even though we make fun of him sometimes when he disappears in primetime moments. That could be a scary factor, but I think for the Falcons, if I'm not wrong, I think they do have the cap space for it. I think where are they at? They're sitting around middle of the pack for the amount of cap space that they have. And they are projecting for Kirk Cousins to have a 3-year, $118.8 million contract, which is around, I think, $39 million a year. And it's just a smarter thing to do because you're only giving up the money. And I think that's a pretty nice contract given the scenario that the Falcons are in right now. They're sitting pretty with their new running back, brand new, just got done with his first season. You got Kyle Pitts, right, who's been, oh man, it's really tough with that guy because we all thought he was going to be great, but you could argue that he's been misused, and with the whole scenario with the coaches and stuff like that with the Falcons over there, who knows? Maybe let's just assume he's the guy. He's the guy. He's going to be the number 1 tight end, and they figure it out. That's best case scenario. And then you got Drake London, obviously, right? And then you also got a pretty decent defense that they're still building upon. So it's just better for the Falcons to go with someone with experience to lead that team because they need it. They need a veteran. And Justin Fields is still too young, and he's still got quite a bit to prove. And I think that's why, yeah, I do agree. Kirk Cousins is a good option for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would bring back what I was stating before with Russell Wilson going to Atlanta. It's also the division. It plays a big part of it. You have a weak division, and just you have a great opportunity there. I mean, in Minnesota, he had Detroit Lions, who they went to the NFC Championship. You have the Green Bay Packers that went to the playoffs, and then you have, of course, the Bears that they have the number 1 pick, so they're just going to be building for the future. So it's a good move for you to move to a division that's just really, really low.
Yeah. I don't know. I obviously, who do you see more as a Falcon, Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson?
Kirk Cousins, and the reason is because Russell Wilson, even though I do think really highly of him, is kind of like Lamar Jackson that he has a certain type of skill with his legs. Not as fast as Lamar Jackson. I mean, let me just make that clear.
Mm-hmm.
But that just makes him an X factor. With Kirk Cousins, you know that you're going to have a pocket passer, and that he's just so experienced and just makes big time throws, and he has won a lot of games. That if you put that type of quarterback, that teams would just love to have a pocket passer because you can do so many packages with him that you're not worried about if he can make the throws or not. You know that Kirk Cousins can make the throws. And with Russell Wilson, you have to make packages that mesh with his skills as Lamar Jackson as well. So for me, I would go with Kirk Cousins because, I mean, just he can make the throws.
I think this is just like a straight up prediction, just nothing much to it. I'm just going to say that I can see Kirk Cousins definitely being with the Falcons and Russell Wilson being with the Raiders. And that's all I'm going to say. It's just a hunch. But that's kind of what I would see. I think, yeah, it does make more sense for Kirk Cousins to go with the Falcons. But that doesn't make him the only team that I think he could go to, right? But we're specifically talking about the Falcons. I want to move on to...
because they are inquiring about Kirk Cousins. Yeah. They have inquired about Justin Fields. So we know that that's a team that is looking. I know the Commanders is another one, but I mean, they're made it loud and clear. We're looking for a quarterback.
Yeah, and I think, if I'm not wrong, I had it here somewhere. They seem to have been more interested in Kirk Cousins. So this is from a Sports Illustrated article in Atlanta. It's unclear how the conversation went when they were talking about the Chicago and Atlanta thing with Justin Fields. But the buzz about Atlanta's next starting quarterback wasn't Fields. And this was posted today.
Which is today, March 4th.
Instead, there was more talk inside league circles of the Falcons' pursuit of Minnesota Vikings quarterback Kirk Cousins, who's poised to hit free agency. And you also got to take into account that he tore his Achilles in Week 8.
True.
Good thing he's a pocket passer, but still.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Now that it's a little bit more confirmed on who they're more interested in, it seems like they're leaning more with Kirk Cousins. So we could possibly see him as a Falcon, which is kind of crazy to me. And I think good for him. I mean, he still got his time, and I think he'll be surrounded by a good team. How well he'll do, I don't know, but I don't think he's going to suck over there. Now let's talk about a quarterback in the NFC as well, and specifically Dak Prescott. So he is available for a contract extension, and we're gonna talk about the fact that is Dak Prescott gonna be the highest paid QB?
I mean, he probably is, but he shouldn't be. Absolutely not. But I understand that the quarterback, they get paid and they always set the market. I just hope for the Dallas Cowboys' sake, he gets a team-friendly deal like Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has a 10-year, $450 million contract, which made him the highest-paid NFL player in history. But what is great about his contract is the yearly salary. It is team-friendly compared to the top-tier NFL quarterbacks. Dak Prescott has already gotten paid the big bucks, and even though I agree he should continue to get paid the big bucks, he should structure it for it to be a team-friendly deal. Dallas Cowboys have a history of keeping their franchise quarterbacks for all their career without playing anywhere else, like Roger Staubach, Troy Aikman, and Tony Romo. Hopefully, Dak and the Cowboys come to a team-friendly agreement.
That speaks a lot on Jerry Jones, and I could see that as a positive and a negative. And in this case, I think it's a more negative rather than like the fact that they're kind of stuck with him, and I think he's a good quarterback. But also the scenario that the Cowboys and Jerry Jones and what they're putting themselves in is difficult. They're making it difficult, right? I don't like the situation with the head coach, right? But should he be the highest paid QB? I don't think so, but I think there's a good chance he might be. And right now he's sitting at $40 million a year. And his projected contract extension is 3 years for $180 million, which is $60 million per year. So that's a big jump because right now the quarterback making the most per year is Joe Burrow with $55 million, and his contract is 5 years long. I don't think he's up there, but he's gonna get it because Jerry Jones will give that money to him. But you can't ignore the fact that you also gotta manage your money because you got some people to pay that isn't just the quarterback. You got the quarterback on the other side, the defense. You got Micah Parsons, right? Your head guy. That's the leader of that defense. You gotta pay him, right? You got to pay a handful of people. And also, you can't forget about CeeDee Lamb. He's going to want some money too.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
You know that they're making also changes that, like, for example, left tackle, Tyron Smith, even though he's been a star and hurt mostly every single year. Yeah. But he's like a top 5 left tackle in the league, and he's not going to be a Cowboy anymore. Yeah. The center, I can't really say his name correctly, but Biadish. He's also going to be gone, and the offensive line is a huge part of the Dallas Cowboys.
They're going to have to draft. So, that's what's going to happen. They're going to
have to draft. Yes, exactly. They're going to have to draft. So it just seems like this is the same type of situation that happens every 2-3 years, that they just let go of their veteran players that do produce, and they bring back new guys because they are looked at as really good at drafting in the draft. Even though you can actually debate the last year's draft wasn't that great for them. Yeah, especially in the first round with Mozzie Smith there. I didn't even see him play most of the time, but that's a different topic there. Mm-hmm. So they are making changes. They do have to pay, like you said, Micah Parsons coming soon, a monster deal probably. CeeDee Lamb, he was one of the top wide receivers in the league last year. And now you have Dak Prescott. But my thing is that he already got paid like big bucks, right? Continue getting paid the big bucks, but make it team friendly, man. I mean, yes. When last time you got the contract, it was a 4-year deal, and usually that's 5 years. I mean, it didn't help the team, so the salary is high. So this year coming up, this next season, he's still under contract, but it's almost paying $60 million off of that cap. Right. So, I mean, if you want to stay as a Cowboy, if you want to win, I mean, it comes to in my opinion, a decision in which the player has to decide, do I really want to win the Super Bowl? Because I got to make some team-friendly deals here, just like Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady.
Yeah, Dak Prescott is in a position right now to where he has to consider his contract and be valuable and be friendly to the team. And I think the Cowboys made a mistake not extending CeeDee Lamb last season. And now that he had probably, I think, his best season so far of his career, that value went up. So Jerry Jones messed up big time. So that's another problem. And this just speaks on just like the uncertainty he had on CeeDee Lamb. Why didn't you extend him last season? He needed something more to prove. Well, there you go. He went to go prove for you, right? He proved that he's worth that money. Now he's going to be valid even more. And then you got Dak Prescott, who's like, he's going to want his money. And now he's a dad too. So he wants that like extra little bit of money. I don't know. I don't know. I think he's smart enough. I think Dak Prescott is smart enough to make it team friendly. But
now you're in a position that like all the quarterbacks, top tier quarterbacks got paid. Joe Burrow got paid. Patrick Mahomes got paid. Herbert got paid. Lamar Jackson got paid. Mm-hmm. Like who's left? So it's gonna be a while that we have another big time deal coming up, because the extension for the other guys is gonna take a while. So I don't know. You got to be a little bit careful here. I know the salary cap went up, but I mean, if you want to keep these players, you have to really be, I don't know, you got to make that contract very team friendly and figure things out. I know it's all about business and the players need to get paid, but I mean, it's also about the championship, right? And if Dak comes to you and you're the Dallas Cowboys and he's like, I mean, honestly, I just want to get paid. I don't care what you guys, I don't think he's going to say it in those words, but I mean, that salary cap, that's your guys' problem to figure out. That's not my problem. I get me the $60 million a year, because that's what everybody's thinking. That's going to be $60 million a year. So that's not team friendly. And I don't know. You might have to double think and maybe be a little bit strategic if you're the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott is a really good quarterback, not elite, a really good quarterback. But if you come to a situation that maybe another team will give up, I don't know, 3 first-round picks,
someone
you
desperate.
got to think about it.
It has to be someone desperate. And who are the teams that are desperate right now? I don't think there's more than 3.
I would assume that the new, it would be really, really bad for Cowboys fans, but what about the new owner for the Commanders? I mean, they would like to see something happening. What about the Denver Broncos?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're letting their quarterback go, put Dak Prescott in that division. With Sean Payton, maybe that's a place that it can work.
Yeah.
What about Pittsburgh?
Mm-hmm.
There is teams out there, but I'm mentioning teams that,
but
the Denver Broncos, they don't have that much to give, first of all, for trade.
Yeah.
And then the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's not how they work, right? Giving away first round picks for a quarterback, that's not how they work either. But the Commanders, they could be one. Just like McNabb went to the Washington team when it was back then, from Eagles to Washington.
Yeah. So, what I was trying to say is that there's not that many desperate teams. And I think this is where you take advantage. Jerry Jones builds relationships with these players. They're
What about the Raiders, man? You spoke about the Raiders. I think there are teams out there
that are willing to give up something as big as what you said.
You have Devontae Adams. I know Josh Jacobs, he can leave, but that team also, they have defensive pieces, and it's Las Vegas, right? They're they're in thirst to be successful, especially in that division. And most of all these teams need a quarterback, and sometimes a refreshing place is also a good place for a quarterback. But I wouldn't say to get rid of Dak Prescott if you're the Dallas Cowboys, because it's going to be really hard to replace him. But I'm just saying, if Dak Prescott if you see him that he doesn't really care that much, is then it might be a possibility that you might have to move on from him.
Yeah, it's it's tough. It's always tough, and that's always the thing. It's always tough to find a replacement quarterback. But it's not insanely crazy to think that maybe you can look at like better options, but we'll see. I don't think it's going that way. I think the Cowboys are sticking with him, and I really hope that Dak Prescott makes it team friendly. I really do, and that's all I can speak on that. Yeah. I mean, I hope so, and if they do make it team friendly, even better. That means that they're in a good position for the future. I want to move on to the last topic now, and this is kind of sprinkled on throughout the podcast, but there's the top free agents available currently right now. So there's a list, right? And I don't know, is there like a specific ones that you want to talk about? What do you want to talk about? Like, who's the most valuable right now? Like top 5?
Yeah, for sure. So free agents, like when teams can talk to other teams to move around, maybe trades and things like that. It's next week on Tuesday, which I believe it's March 12th. So let's start off with Chris Jones. He's the number 1 defensive player available. He's the best defensive player the Chiefs has, and he's a defensive lineman you absolutely overpay for. He was a big impact and back-to-back Super Bowls, and he will continue to be for the foreseeable future. Next up, we have Kirk Cousins. We talked about him, the quarterback that people love to hate and the quarterback that receives a lot of praise as well. He's a star in fantasy football and a high-caliber quarterback that can win you a lot of games. Christian Wilkins, he's another player. He's from the Dolphins. He's coming off of a high 61 quarterback pressure season and was dominant factor in the defensive side for the Dolphins. If you need a clear help on the defensive line, Wilkins for sure has that depth to be that 1-2 threat and defensive line teams. The last one that I have is Brian Burns. Reports say that Panthers have stopped contract talks with Brian Burns. He is a top 10 defensive lineman, and the Panthers actually turned down multiple first-round picks from the LA Rams to acquire him back in 2022. Even though that was a bad move on the Panthers, by my opinion, I still say giving up a first round for Brian Burns is not a bad trade.
I like that list. There's quite a bit of people available. Oh man,
for sure.
It gets me thinking what the Cowboys could do and how they're always going all in, whatever.
Well, I mean, take that what Jerry Jones said with a grain of salt. Then you have his son Steven Smith just saying, Steven Jones saying, like we go in every single year. Like if you're a Cowboy fan, you know that's not true.
It's so stupid.
You're stuck with this. You're stuck with this Jones family. It is what it is.
Stupid. So stupid. Yeah, there's a lot. Like, wow. I would.
You know Snead from the Kansas City Chiefs? I wanted to put him here on the list, but he actually was reported that they're franchise tagging.
They're choosing him over Chris Jones. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Josh Allen is another one from defense. Yeah, from the
Jacksonville.
From Jacksonville defense. He's also a good one, but it looks like he's going to be franchise tagged too. Of course, you have like Saquon Barkley, like those players.
Yeah, but there's actually, I saw not that long ago too that there's those rumors that are starting to bubble up with him going to the Texans. So that's something to keep an eye on. I'm trying to think who's on that
Saquon
rumor.
Barkley with
that
the
would
Texans?
Be crazy. That would be crazy. With already the playoff run that they had this past season, I can't imagine actually having a running game. It's just dual threat, but that's pretty exciting. T. Higgins.
I think CJ Stroud looks like he can be a very legitimate quarterback, even though we've seen a lot of downfall of quarterbacks after their first year. But it doesn't seem that's going to be what's going to happen to CJ Stroud. But imagine that type of play with Tank, the wide receiver. What's the other guy? Collins, the other wide receiver. I don't know what's going to happen with Schultz. They're saying that he can actually leave the Texans as well.
Yeah.
But he was also a big time threat for them. And then you put on Saquon Barkley there, man, that's a big time. I mean, I think they'll dominate that division.
Yep. And it's not like they're like, if they miss out on Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs is still there.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler's still there. not awful.
Henry's still there.
Henry's still there.
Right.
So for the Texans, they got they got options at running back for the free agency. So yeah, I think
that's why I didn't put them there. Yeah, running backs. I mean, it's unfortunate for them. You said it that in the next bargaining agreement, they should really do like a clause for running backs because they really get screwed over.
Yep.
So, but I mean, I wouldn't pay a lot for a running back. No, I'm sorry, that's just business.
Yeah. I forgot Tony Pollard too. I think I think wow, that's like a thing I completely missed on. That's right, they franchise tagged him, and I don't think he's coming back. I don't think so either. I don't think he's coming back. I think they're probably, if they really want to go all in, quote unquote, they would get someone, I don't know, like the ones I just mentioned, pretty much.
But wait, what about Derrick Henry? Do you think he's like they say after 28 they go down. He did play well this year, but not like as big time as he was years prior.
Yeah.
I mean, if the Dallas Cowboys do get Derrick Henry, I don't think it's gonna be like, man, they're Super Bowl for sure now, because now Dak Prescott has a running game. Yeah, I don't think so. For sure it'll help. But I just don't trust it, man. I just don't trust it. I know Mike McCarthy, he used his running backs a lot with Aaron Rodgers during Green Bay. I mean, Stark, Eddie Lacy, remember those guys?
Yep.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think, man, it sucks too, because I think Tony Pollard, he wasn't horrible. It's just he's not your number one. I don't know what's going to happen to him. I don't know what team is going to cave into it says that he's projected to have 3 years for $19.8 million, which is $6.6 million a year. Compared to someone like Saquon.
Why not the Texans? If you get a legitimate first, like a number one running back, I don't know. Yeah. It doesn't have to be Saquon or Derrick Henry, just one that actually. I mean, who was the last one that they had? And he played pretty well. He came from Buffalo.
What? Oh,
the running back for the Texans.
Oh.
And he was in Buffalo before.
Yeah. I forgot his name.
Well, him. Yeah. And then you put you put Tony Pollard as number 2. Big time. And that way the Texans don't have to spend so much on their running backs. And yeah, for sure.
Devin Singletary.
Devin Singletary, exactly. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's this list. When I was looking over this list, I'm like, there's quite a bit of people.
Yeah.
That are. It would be nice to see where they land. Patrick Queen. Who else did we forget to mention?
Hey,
I hope
Cowboys,
I hope Stephon Gilmore comes back.
Well, I mean, you have Bland and Diggs.
I know, which is good. Like the way it was set up, it was good. But until Trayvon Diggs got injured, right? Mm-hmm. The depth got thinner. But I think if you just bring him back, because they had a really good secondary.
I think the Cowboys need help on the defensive line. I mean, I don't know if you're hearing, but Armstrong, he's a big time lineman, and he looks like he's going to be leaving too. I think you need to really big time solidify that defensive line, man. And for Micah Parsons to do his thing, because if nobody's also is helping to bring that pressure, then
you could argue the way that Dan Quinn was making his game plan. There was a specific one that really blew up, where Dan Quinn was not having the right scheme, and maybe for Mozzie Smith, it was just a bad chemistry. It was bad compatibility with Dan Quinn. I don't want to say anything yet, but maybe it was that. Like maybe it's just me hoping that Mozzie Smith is not
the
a
Legion
a
of Boom coach is having trouble with Mozzie Smith. I doubt it.
Well, I don't know. The defense didn't look that good this past year. There was some really, really questionable stuff that was happening when it shouldn't have, even with all those injuries.
They weren't awful, man. I mean,
they weren't awful.
How many pick six does Bland have?
I know, and that's part of helping. Dan Quinn helped them a lot, right? And I think they made him really aggressive, really smart, and I think the secondary is great. And I think what he built with the secondary is great. It's just, again, the defensive line wasn't all that good.
Now you have the Commanders with Dan Quinn as head coach against the Cowboys, and Dan Quinn knowing how the Cowboys are.
I don't see that.
Now those games are going to be a little bit more interesting because they've been pretty bad these last few seasons.
Yeah, I don't see it being like a one-sided thing of the Cowboys beating them up.
They need to get a quarterback or else it just doesn't work out.
Yeah. And
I think Dan Quinn just took the chance because his stock was going down of how bad they played, especially in the playoffs. For DeMarcus Lawrence, your star defensive lineman, saying they were just gassed out, and for them every Sunday's their Super Bowl. That just tells you the culture that team has. So, I don't know.
I just want to see a harder schedule next year. That's all I want to see. I don't want to see a bunch of cakewalks, right? Because a lot of people say this, right, about the Cowboys, and it's pretty much true for the most part. You can't just say it's just every game is super easy for them, but it's most of the games, and I think that's what it was. And I don't want to say it was stat padding on the defensive side, but you could argue that it was, and I don't like that. I want them to play a lot more competitive teams that they have. I know it's tough because of the division they're in, but I would like to see a better schedule.
If I was the Tylenol company and the Aleve company and the Excedrin company, I would put so much advertisement in commercials during the Cowboys games because the
massive headaches.
That's just what this team does to you. It just brings you lots of headaches. It's just trying to help the Cowboys fans. Yeah.
It's very frustrating because it's the way they lose, the way they just are. It's just so frustrating, and I don't think I see that with any other team really in the NFL.
That playoff game that they played against the Packers, you feel like you wasted a season.
Yes,
it was just wasted. All those games that you watched were just wasted.
Embarrassing.
I
think before we go any further down into that, I think we should end it here, and maybe there'll be some more exciting news for the Cowboys. Fingers crossed. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for those listening to the very end, and we'd love to see you guys giving your opinion with us on our social media, which is football_tailgaters on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you guys again for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.